somewhere in the ambulance where people are going to find probably the glove box, where somebody won't take it.
That's probably your best bet, because nobody
Okay.
ever goes in the glove box.
You know what? I go in there to find the owner's manual and it's gone. Anyway, we'll put this in. You want to go over this with them?
Yeah, everything all, this really covers if something goes wrong while in operation or if you're out in the field, this kind of covers the different scenarios, everything that could come up and how to overcome this so that you don't get stuck out there. I'll go over all that. There are really 4 main things that may come up. These guides on the doors are similar. This is under normal operations or powered operations, and then this has how to operate it manually. This goes into much more detail about that. And again, keeping this in the ambulance so that if it comes up and you can't remember what to do, it's a good really good quick reference. So you guys want to pass that around and take a look at it. I'll go through normal operations first, how it would operate under power first, and then show you if we lose power to the cot or lose power to the power load, how to operate it in manual mode. Can I get somebody to volunteer? Have you used this before?
Yeah.
Okay.
Everyone else hasn't besides us.
Okay, gotcha. So you've used somebody else's in other services. So if you would just pull down on the red tab and then pull the cot out. When it's powered up, listen for it to jog. You'll hear the sound and then see it jog up. And the reason I say to watch for that is if it doesn't do that, then you'll know that you're going to need to prepare to accept the weight of it so that the power load's it hasn't lifted it up. So just be prepared for that. So now we heard it and saw it come up off of the ground or jog up, so we know that it's operating. When the green lights come on, that lets you know that you can now lower the legs. You do that by holding the plus. Just think adding the legs, subtracting the legs. When you hear the pitch change, that tells you the power load arms are coming down, and you can go ahead and let go of the button. Once they're all the way down, what I train guys to do is, and I have another handle on order for you.
Okay, thank you.
What I train guys to do is to always, just like you're releasing the safety bar, always use these manual levers up here. So I'll move the cot so you can see them. There's a handle on each side. They move at the same time, but they'll both release the cot manually. And the reason I say to rely on this rather than the button, so have you all seen the third button on the controls up here? There's a small,
It's a little round one.
yeah, so if I'm, just to show you quickly why I say to use this first. So if there are 2 of you, whoever's on the side, pull up on the manual lever. If you're operating by yourself, you can push this button and it'll release the cot out. So the reason I say to use this one first and then rely on this second is if the cot's twisted at all and I push that button, it's a safety precaution, it won't let the cot come out. Or if you're on an decline and the cot's, because of gravity, there's some pressure on the latch. If I push that, it's not going to release it. So if you are operating by yourself and need to release it using the button, just push it in and then push the button and it will come out. Otherwise, just rely on using this every time and you won't run into that as an issue out in the field. So for loading it back in, you want to just hold the minus button, it'll pick the cot up off the ground, pulls the legs up, and then you just slide it in like a filing cabinet. This has the power load has a 750-pound operating capacity. What that means is it'll pick up this powered cot and the 700-pound patient, and 50 pounds worth of gear. So if you have a monitor up at the head end or O2 goggle or something like that, it will still lift the cot, all that, and the 700-pound patient.
This charges, right?
Yeah, so when you slid it back in, it's going to charge. I believe they wired it direct to your battery, so it'll charge all the time unless your battery's too low.
That's one thing, guys, we got to make sure is we can't leave this thing unplugged when it's in the bay. Make sure you guys plug it back in because it takes quite a bit of charge off of that battery. Overnight might kill the battery. Okay.
It does. There is an indicator down here. You'll see the light come on, and then when it starts blinking, that tells you that the cot battery is charging in here. So maybe, I mean, you could leave that battery in there at all times, but then you have another battery that's not getting any use, it'll probably go bad. Maybe rotate them every couple of weeks or something. But it's not, you're not going to need to put it on a charger at the end of each shift that way. Which is nice.
There was another set of lights up there in the front that were blinking too,
Yeah, so are you talking on the?
on the head.
Yeah, there is a light on the side and on the back of the power load. I'll pull it out so you can see those. So this is all wireless. There aren't any wires running from one component to the next. So that's charging wirelessly. There's the indicator light for the power load is on the side and up at the head end. When you load it in and it starts blinking, that's telling you that the power load trolley battery is charging. So to kind of, I'll go through real quick and
So there's a battery in that power load right there too.
Yeah.
How easy is that to access and
to get to.
and replace if they have a problem?
I don't know how frequently it would need to be replaced.
Okay.
As long as it kept a charge, like if a unit were to sit for a couple of months or something, then it may go bad.
What's the life expectancy of them? Do you know?
It's a lead acid type of battery, so I mean if the charge is kept to it, it may be 2 or 3 years. I haven't
Okay,
heard
that's
of
something that we got to keep in mind. That we'll have to replace eventually.
there are 2 bolts on the back to get to it. It's really easy to get to.
Okay. And it's up there in the front. Okay.
So when I'm saying trolley, this is the trolley. The loading arms are right here. The transfer is this black thing. We call it the transfer because it takes the trolley in and out. The trolley will roll on the transfer itself too. And then the anchor is what connects all of this to the Florida ambulance, and that's the yellow piece up there. So let's talk about any questions on any of that on normal operation.
If we do, because we're used to about every day, turn on the batteries, will that hurt it at all?
No.
We just keep that cycle up?
Not at all. No. My concern would be that it would just be left in there, not, and you wouldn't be rotating them.
Right.
So rotating them like
So
yours.
we'll just keep doing what we're doing.
Yeah.
We'll be turning them over just as fast as we're
One thing I did mention when loading it in, make sure to hold on to it until it settles down, and then when it sets into position, jiggle it back and forth just to make sure that it's latched into place. One of the major advantages of this type of system is the crash rating. It was the first. This is the first cough fastener that met the SAE, the new SAE guidance, which is pretty extreme actual crash testing rather than the previous pull test where they would just hook a chain up to a fastener and pull on it. So that the cot is that when you load it in, it loads in the position, and it's attached in a position. It's attached to the floor of the ambulance at the head and at the foot. So if you're in a rollover or something, the cot will stay in position on the floor. So let's talk about manually operating this if we were to lose power to one or to both. So it's nice that this is modular. If you lost power to the cot, you wouldn't be completely out of business. You could still load it in manually, and same with the power load. So there are ways to operate it in different scenarios. Let's talk first about if we've lost power to the cot. So we load it in, attach it in like we would normally. You see the green lights come on, and that will tell us that we can pick it up. Now if I hold or push the control buttons here, nothing's happening, right? Because we don't have power. Can I get it? One of you guys can help me out? So if you go over to the side right here, on the control panel, there's a power button, and then there are 2 up and down arrows, and then there's a large button. I'll tell you what the large button is in a little bit. It's a hydraulic dump. But the arrows, what you can do is just hold the up arrow, and it's going to pick our cot up. Once it's all the way up, I'll pull in on this lever. You can pull the legs up for me. Not ideal, is it? Then once we get in, you can go ahead and let go of them. I'm going to hold on to this lever the whole time. Once it sets down and latches into place, and I'll let go of it. And just doing that so that there's not hydraulic pressure. If there is, then it won't let the cot set all the way down and latch into place. We'll make sure it's locked in now, and it is. Taking it out, we're gonna have to do the same thing coming out. Just remember when you make sure to unload it the same way that you've loaded it, and then I'll explain why that is here in a little bit. So then set it down, if you go down to down there this time, we're going to set it down and down. And then obviously to release it, I'm going to need to pull up on the lever here. So next would be if we lost power in the power line, right? So we'd find this out if I would come up, push it in, same thing would happen. We'd push the buttons and nothing's going to happen. So what we can do in that case is you'll pull up on the loading arms and you'll hear it, the latch release. That's actually a little roller that pops up to keep the trolley in position. So it'll drop down and let us push it in. Once that's all the way in, you'll hear it latch and kind of jiggle it just to make sure that it latches. Once it's all the way in, we're going to operate this like it's a traditional fastener, essentially. So it's like it's a manual fastener. I'll come in.
No, you didn't. You didn't get past it. There you go. Now you are.
So it'll latch in the head and the foot in. I mentioned earlier, make sure to unload it the same way we load it. And this is the big reason for that. And also, earlier when we talked about, so you can still release the cot by pushing this lever, even though we loaded it in manually. But notice how it didn't make a noise and it didn't jog up. So I know I'm going to need to take the weight of the cot because the power load's not supporting it at all. So it's engineered to come out the same way that it goes in. So then the only other thing regarding manual operations is if we didn't have power here or power there. So we would leave the trolley in the same position and then just manually load the cot in. So pulling the legs up manually. Loading it in. Final thing here would be, to get it out, just pull up on the load arms here. There's a large button all the way at the head end. It's right underneath where the Stryker logo is. It's a big round red button. I'll push in on that and then it'll roll out. Forgot to mention this earlier. If you're on site, you need to secure your ambulance.
Which red button were you pushing on?
It's all the way at
the head?
So at the head and the anchor.
Okay.
If you just line up with where it says Stryker on the trolley and reach down underneath, there's a large red button that you push on. So if you needed to secure your ambulance doors, you just roll this in. There are two rubber stoppers here, so it'll keep it from rolling back and forth. Now, if you were going to transport this without a cot, you'd want it all the way at the head end so it doesn't slide back and forth. But this will be good enough to close the doors if you're going into a home. You need to shut doors. So the only other thing I'll point out right here, if you guys could come take a close look at this. There are two flat. See the two flat bars right here. So these are. That is our manual transfer release levers. We use these if you're going to load the cot in and it's only going about halfway in and it's making like a clanking noise. Or the reverse of that, if you're taking it out and it's doing the same thing, you can't get it all the way out and it's like it's jamming against something. What you do is you just reach under, so the top would be right here, right? And you just reach underneath them and pull these two levers and then it'll release that. So then you can, if you're putting it in, you can go ahead and get it in. If you're pulling it out, you can get it out. But what it'll look like is it's just coming out and stopping in position, that'll get it.
What's not
If debris were to get in the way, usually if something's keeping this from moving, so like one service that I had it happen to was a pin cap from like a big pin was stuck right there. That usually would cause that enough crack or something built up in there. This is power washable.
Yeah.
If you're gonna strip it down, just make sure to turn it off, and you can push the power button to do that. I did miss one thing. I'll show you another manual operation. I also say if you are gonna wash it, do it once over on the trolley to make sure that there aren't any cracks in it, and then turn it off before washing. So the one thing I forgot was to explain the hydraulic dump there.
Should that big button?
Yeah, you hit that button. So here, if you're ever, so if we're in a spot where the legs have come down, but the loading arms will not come down, you can push in the hydraulic dump. And the way I say to operate is to make, it's kind of hard to push in. I make a fist like this, and then push in with your thumb, and that'll drop it down. And then if you just keep holding it, and then pull the load arms the rest of the way down, then you can go ahead and get it out. Very rarely would you need to use that. Probably, if it ever happened, what it could be is there's a sensor in here that will detect when the cot has hit the ground. And if you're in a situation where the ambulance is a lot higher than the surface where you're setting the cot down, it could not recognize that it's close to the ground or touching the ground, and you may need to push that button in to get the arms to come down. I think that covers.
Heard something about if it's it's not completely level side to side. How do you solve that?
So the thing that comes up most frequently with that is probably what I've found to be the most common issue if it's not level is, again, there's the cot being torqued in one direction or another, and guys are pushing this button right here to try to release it, and it's not going to release because of the pressure sensor. So one way to address that is to just rely on pulling on this, because if this is twisted and I pull this lever, it's going to release no matter what. So that's probably the most common thing. The other would be if you're loading it and it's uneven, and how we would handle that is just I'll raise it above so that both are higher than the track. And when I'm saying track, I mean this portion that would allow you to slide the bars on the cot into position. So if you raise it above, so say this side is higher than this side, and we just raise it above there and then drop it on to the rail and it will slide in. Does that make sense? And it's a practice thing. I would say with that, the ambulance in an awkward position, if there's a problem 9 times out of 10, it's because the button up here is being pushed rather than the lever being to release the cot out. Good question. Any other questions or concerns?
And these cannot be interchanged. This gurney in particular cannot be interchanged into an ambulance that doesn't have the auto load system.
You
can, but you can't go the other way.
Right, exactly. Yeah, you could put this in any one of your ambulances. It has a post down here to latch into the rail fastener. But you're right. We can't do the opposite. A quick visual, the easiest way to tell. See the posts that are pointed towards the middle on the loading wheels. So right here, there's kind of a silver post there. Just look for that, and that'll tell you if it's equipped to work with power load or not. We have a couple of at the beginning of next week, a couple of your cots are going to be outfitted with that system so so it'll work with power load. That's the easiest way to tell if it'll work or not. Earlier, someone had pointed out the XPS on here. Are there any other features on this cot that you're?
The brake.
Brake system.
Okay.
We don't have that.
I'll show this to you. This I think this one's mine.
It is. It's the one that came back with.
I'll show that to you in case it starts showing up here for you. So what XPS is well expanded. It stands for expanded patient surface. What it allows you to do is to expand the width of the cot. So our standard rails, which fold down flat like this, it's great that the cot will handle a 700-pound patient, and the power load will also lift the cot and the patient. But then a lot of services are saying that's fantastic, but if we get even a 300 or 400-pound person, sometimes it's hard to fit them in between the rails, and it's uncomfortable for the patient if they're that size. So this allows you to make the cot wider for the varying widths. So this is the widest setting. This is actually 4 inches wider than our bariatric cot in this position right here. There's 7 different locking settings, and you can just kind of ratchet it in depending on the person's width. To release it, the one thing that you'll notice, 2 things will come up. Releasing it, if it's flat like this and I pull on the handle, it's not going to release. If there's any weight against it and I pull on it, and it's a safety precaution, right? Because if the patient's weight's against this and they grab onto the handle, it's not going to flip over. It takes a positive action to release it, meaning you have to push in a little bit while pulling on the handle, and then it'll drop down. A little awkward the first couple times, but then you'll get it figured out and get the hang of it. The other thing is if you're transferring them over to a gurney in the emergency room, with our rails before, you can be right up against the bed and fold the rails down. With this, it doesn't quite work like that. You'll have to flop it down and then scooch up against whatever you're transferring to. The steering lock it'll lock in the 2 head-end casters. It makes it really nice if you're moving a cot around by yourself, if you need to take it into the house and you're by yourself pulling it in. You can lock the 2 head-end wheels by either this lever right here. This will lock it or unlock it, and then these 2 also do the exact same thing. You'll lock those 2. The trick for locking it is to pull it in one direction quickly, just kind of swing the head in, and it'll lock those 2 into position. Knee gauge. Do your cots have the knee gauge? Okay. Any other questions? You guys want to, while I'm here, do you guys want to take turns toying around with it and then see what questions you come up with?